Welcome back to Canada Decides. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. However, it's important. On Monday, Canadians, our beloved allies and friends to the north, will head to the polls to vote for the next ruling party and, in turn, a prime minister. Already, early voting has shattered records. Several parties are vying for a seat at the table, but here's the important part. One of these two men is likely to be the next prime minister. Mark Carney, the new leader of the Liberals, he replaced Justin Trudeau, or Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives. Mercedes Stephenson joins me now. She's the Ottawa bureau chief for Canada's Global News and joins us from, I believe, Toronto. It's great to have you with us. Handicap where the race stands now and where it's heading.
It is a tight race, which frankly no one was expecting because coming into this, the Conservatives had a 20-point lead over the Liberals. What changed? Well, the Liberals got a new leader right before the election was called, and he has made tremendous gains throughout this, particularly around the issue of Donald Trump and tariffs. Going into these final days, we really don't know who's going to win. The Liberals have managed to pull ahead, but the polls have appeared to be tightening. The question is, are they tightening in the right places? The way that the Canadian system works, particularly major urban cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, play an outsized role in who gets elected. And in those cities, the Liberals are doing much better. The question is there hidden support like you saw in the US election for Donald Trump that is not showing up in the polls that could manifest itself on election day? Or are the Liberals still ahead in especially those key areas that will decide it? But at this point, it really is a tight race and no one is sure where it's going to go, even though a lot of folks are saying kind of the Liberals to lose. The reality is I know very few people who are comfortable, who cover this stuff, making a strong bet on who might be the winner on Monday night.
And Mercedes, you might well have mentioned the magic word in this race, Trump.
But yes, it's, I've covered a lot of elections, Major. I've never seen one focused on foreign policy. This is unheard of in Canada. Like, we're not a big military power. We don't talk about national defense or foreign affairs very much. The last election that was remotely similar would have been 1988 when we were talking about negotiating NAFTA. The central issue of this election, which no one could have predicted even a few weeks out before it, is who is the best person to handle Donald Trump. And that's, of course, because he is openly speculating about making Canada the 51st state. And I think a lot of Americans assume Canadians see it as a joke. They don't. It's taken very seriously up here. People are very upset by it. They're very concerned about our sovereignty. And of course, we're hugely reliant on the United States militarily and economically. So it really has become the big issue. And that's part of what blew that Conservative lead. They were around issues like crime and affordability, which are huge issues here in Canada, just as they are in the US. Lots of people talking about them, but it's no longer the central issue. That has been replaced with Donald Trump.
And it seems like this campaign also has an interesting dynamic in this sense. Mark Carney is saying, if I gather it, I'm not Justin Trudeau, and Pierre Poilievre is saying, I'm not Trumpist. I'm my own person. They're both saying they're their own person, yet living in the politics of an umbrella of their, in Mark Carney's case, the Justin Trudeau Liberal Party, or in Pierre Poilievre's case, the idea that he's Trumpist and therefore kind of radioactive.
I think you're making such an interesting point there, and it's true. I mean, how many races do you see to be the head of a government in a country that are based around who you're not instead of who you are? And that is really what these two contenders are dealing with. In the case of Mark Carney, he has to distance himself as far as possible from Justin Trudeau, who is basically political toxicity defined up here. Liberal or conservative people were very angry with Justin Trudeau when he left office. Mark Carney has, in fairness, been differentiating himself in a number of significant ways. While he has largely the same team, which is something the Conservatives attack him around, he has changed the policies. In fact, he's stolen a number of the Conservatives' policies, essentially. He's moving the party back to the center, sort of the business Liberals versus the more socialist approach that the previous Liberals had taken with bringing in things like pharmacare, dental care, which made them very popular with some folks. But those are not traditional Liberal policies here. Now, the Conservatives, you have Pierre Poilievre, who has looked and sounded a lot like Donald Trump on issues, desperately trying to distance himself from that, because that is the last thing that Canadians want to vote for when they feel that the country is potentially under threat. So he has spent a lot of time saying, I'll be tough on Donald Trump. The difficulty with Pierre is that sometimes the approach looks similar. So, for example, they choose the media questions. We're only allowed 4 questions a day and no follow-ups. We're not allowed to walk around at the rallies and talk to people. So in the same way that both of them are saying, I am not this other person. There are similarities and there are differences. The question I think ultimately Canadians will be answering is who they trust to negotiate with Donald Trump or try to protect the country if that negotiation is impossible.
Great conversation. Excellent perspective. Mercedes Stevens, I know it's going to be a long weekend and a long election night. Thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.